services out with, the name of the lesson is gaslighting today, but I'd like to start them out with a joke. So I wanted to tell you about a new minister that just got assigned to a church, and he was fresh out of seminary, of course, and he was doing, really eager to share what he knew with everybody. And he was about a month into his new church, and it was a country church, and he was new to the area. And so he was called to do a memorial service at a graveside for a homeless man that nobody knew really around town. I mean, they'd seen him, but they didn't really get to know him. So he went out to this new cemetery that he didn't know where it was. And so he was looking around, and being, got lost. And being a man, he decided, I'm not going to ask directions, I'll find it. And he showed up to the gravesite an hour late. And all he saw was an open place in the ground and a couple of workers there. And so didn't see anybody else, but he pulled up there and said, well, I know you guys, the workers were on lunch, eating their lunch. He said, I know you guys are done, because he looked down in the ground and saw that the top was already on it. And I don't know if you know how they do that. They have a cement thing, and then they put a cement top on it, after they lower the casket in. But anyway, the vault had been closed, is what they say. So anyway, he said, well, I know you guys are eating your lunch and everything, but can you join me for a minute for a little bit of a service for this fine person? And so he was going to, just have a small service, but he ended up starting going as a new minister. He kept going and going and going. He went from Genesis to Revelation. He lasted, about an hour at this service, at the graveside service. And so he finally said, from dust to dust and ashes to ashes, and ended up his service. And he ended up getting in his car and driving off. And one of the workers looked at each other, at the other one, and said, in all my 20 years of doing this, I've never seen that happen before. To come and bless a septic tank like this is just wonderful. So that joke reminded me of, we're putting in a septic tank pretty quick at the new property, so we're going to have to do something like that.
Is your mic on?
I don't know. It should be.
It's not.
It sounds like it is. It's supposed to be on.
It's not.
It's okay. I'll go turn it up.
Okay, go turn it up.
Yeah, it just isn't loud enough.
Well, it will get louder.
This was the wrong cemetery, huh?
Yeah. Maybe, who knows?
Didn't find it after all.
Yeah, I'll say so.
Is it going up at all or not, or is it my batteries?
I don't know.
Okay.
Do you guys think it sounds louder now?
I don't know if it does or not. Hold on, let me
Maybe a little bit.
Like this. How about if I put it like this?
No, move it down on your tie.
How about that?
No,
It works better that way.
no.
Okay.
There you go.
Is that better?
Say something. I
I'm
can't.
saying something right now. What do you want
No.
me to say? Is that better or not? Is it coming out of the speakers?
No,
Barely.
but we can hear
Let me
you.
do this.
Just speak up.
All right, now is that better?
No.
Let me try a different connection. Now, I heard it.
There.
Is that better? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
better.
Yeah,
Whatever's
that's
going
good.
on there.
That's good.
Okay, I hear it now.
You got it.
All right. Well, gaslighting is the subject matter talk about today, and I brought it up because if you've been watching any of the news for quite a while now, not a terribly long time, but quite a while, they've been using this word, and so I thought I knew what it meant, but I really didn't that much. I mean, I did, but I didn't know it meant that severe of a thing. But anyway, what my question I'd like us to answer today during the service is it possible to be wholly good? So I think sometimes when you hear that, you're wondering what the heck does somebody mean by that, and you'll find out at the end for sure, but is it possible to be wholly good? So is it possible to live a life that is totally good? And so that's the question we want to answer. But let's first find out the definition of gaslighting. I think it'll surprise you how extreme it is. Gaslighting, to psychologically manipulate a person, usually over an extended period of time, so that the victim questions the validity of their own thoughts, perception of reality, or memories, and experiences confusion, loss of confidence and self-esteem, and doubts concerning their own emotional and mental stability, to subject someone to gaslighting. So maybe you've seen this, maybe you haven't. I don't know if you've seen it to the severity that this is, but that's really it was kind of shocking to me how how extreme that definition is, which I can understand some people using it now. I think it's an extreme. You'd have to have an extreme situation to use it, but still, I can see how it's been used. And so we have seen it used in these things, though. We've seen it used in politics for sure. You know, one side says the other one's the devil, the other side says the other one's the devil. So, and I'm sure the independents say both of them are the devil. You're both right. So, the thing that though really kind of has led me, and maybe y'all probably have had this experience already, but I've kind of come to the conclusion, because sometimes you like to leave your childhood thoughts as pure as possible, and that's a good thing to a certain extent as long as it's true. Yet sometimes you have to realize that maybe it wasn't true. So like in the news, you know, we see that right now. Definitely there's gaslighting in the news, because you got NBC News is totally opposite of Fox News, and or rather CNN would be a better. CNN, which, you know, is kind of surprising, because Ted Turner, you know, when he started that was a great channel. That was a great news. I mean, you could just hear the news, hear what's going on, without anybody saying what their opinion was. I don't need to hear anybody's opinion of it. I just want to see what's going on personally. But anyway, you can see it in the news. So also, even in religion, we've had it, regrettably, you know, with the Christian crusades, thinking that there is, you know, other people in the world that are so wrong that we need to eliminate them, you know, and then whatever religion, you can pick any religion, though, that's the Christian side of it. There's other forms in religion too, or other things that happen in religion that is gaslighting, and that is like not only a physical act as far as doing it, but more of the gaslighting definition as far as telling somebody that if you don't believe the way I believe and you don't do what I'm telling you to do, then you're going to go to hell. That's gaslighting for sure. That is definitely gaslighting, because God didn't say to, even though the preacher may claim he said that, God did not say to that preacher, go out and tell everybody that if they don't believe a certain way, then they're going to go to hell. So that's a bit of, you know, you can find gaslighting in other places, but these three are something that affects us all, and I hope that if religion starts affecting us all more, as far as not gaslighting, but affecting us as far as listening to what we can do to avoid that. But there does not have to be a separation. There doesn't have to be a bad guy in every situation. But if you'll think back, and I want to go back because I didn't finish that thought on the news. When you're a kid, you know, I don't know if some of you are old enough, some of you aren't, think about Walter Cronkite, you know, you think that, and that's the way it is, you know, and you think that that's the way it is by the end of that, right? That is exactly the way it is. But if you look back at it, I bet you we could point to, that's the way you thought it was, or that's the way you thought your bosses thought it was that told you to say that. So, you know, even though we may have a pure thought of something, not saying that there's nothing pure in life, I'm just saying that sometimes we think of pure things and then find out that they weren't. Just like when we found out that, you know, there were many priests that were abusing children in religion. So that's not a pure thought for sure. But there doesn't have to be a bad guy. You know, we can still think Walter Cronkite was meaning that's the way it is. You know, and so we can remember that fondly if we choose to, and we can also remember, you know, not all ministers, all priests abuse boys, right? Not even close. There's a very few minute portion of them that did. And so think back too, as far as the wars that we've been in. You know, what is it that always happens? The government usually puts out something, these guys are bad. These people are really, really bad. We need to get rid of them. Well, you know, that brings up an idea in people that, yeah, well, I'm an American, so I need to think these guys are bad. But hold off a little bit. Maybe we don't. We're also children of God, which and one of the commandments tell us not to kill, right? So there's a little bit of a difference there. A lot of bit of difference there, really. And so even nowadays, you know, we're talking about, you know, the political parties kind of getting head on against each other. Oh, they're wrong, they're right, they're, you know, this, and it doesn't seem like, it seems like that gap between people, that there's a bad guy gets wider and wider. Yet we have to start doing something a little bit different. And that is, I wish everybody, as far as politics and news, would do this. watch CNN and watch Fox, 30 minutes each day, if you watch the news. So you can get at least both extreme sides of it. So you don't sit there and think, oh, well, this is the only way to think. Because it isn't the only way to think. Neither way isn't the only way to think. But if we get stuck on one side or the other, we are going to think that's the only way to think, and we're going to be closed-minded to what somebody else is thinking or doing. And we can't do that as a humanity. It has nothing to do with nations, the news, or religion. You can't do that as humanity, or we won't exist, to be quite honest. Because we will kill each other off. And even though we've done that in our history, kill each other off, we don't need to continue to do it. There are phases in human understanding about life that we go through. And this is just another phase. Some people right now probably would look at, there are different grades of phases. One of them is spiral dynamics. And some people right now would say we've even gone down. You're supposed to go, the spiral dynamics, you're supposed to go up in the different colors and improve your understanding of humanity, where we are less and less at each other's throat and more at hugging each other. But some people, and we have in the past anyway, gone down, reached a good point or a better point than we've ever been at before, and then come down a little bit, which has happened before. And a lot of people would argue that's happening now. But it doesn't have to happen, because who can stop it? We can stop it. Each individual has to stop it in their own life. That's the only way it's going to stop. We got to quit saying that there's a bad guy in the situation. We have to really quit doing that. If we have a health challenge that we need a new doctor, don't say the guy's a bad guy. Just get a new doctor. Just move on to getting somebody else. Somebody else that's going to help you. Not to line up with your thinking, but to help you get over what you're thinking about someone else, or something to help you get healthy. Whatever it is. There doesn't have to be separation. And a lot of people think that there has to be separation. There doesn't. This thing I put up a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to bring it back because of the fact that I was, when I showed you this nihilism definition, I thought, gosh, it's a shame that people get in that situation. But let me read it real quick. A viewpoint that values and beliefs are unfounded, and that existence is senseless and useless. And I was thinking, you got to kind of feel sorry for that person that has that viewpoint that this is all there is, because there's a lot of people that have that viewpoint, that this is all there is. What we see is all there is. In fact, I heard a comedian the other day, actually ended up, I couldn't take it, I had to turn it off, because he was saying how, God doesn't exist. You really think that there's someone that knows everything about you and is always around and can answer all your questions? That's not God. He said, that's not God. That's Alexa.
Oh my God.
And so anyway, it was funny at the point, but the point is, a lot of people really feel that way, really feel that there's not a God. And it's not that we need to transform people to think that, but the way we can transform people to think that is to know that for ourselves and live that. And if we live that, then we won't have this type of viewpoint that life really is useless, senseless and useless. And that would be a poor way to live life, wouldn't it?
Yes.
It really would be a poor way to live life. And most Unity people don't feel that way yet. We all have times when we're down in the doldrums and we have whatever we feel like is just not going right for us. And that's okay, but if you feel that way, then come to church or ask one of the ministers to let them know how you're feeling, and then we can work out a way to realize the truth of you, which is all good. This is what started this whole thing for me, this talk, and so it kind of ballooned into a lot of things. But I was reading about, which I never knew about, the 1906 race murders in Atlanta. Never knew about that. There's, I think, 10, 15 people that got killed that day. What I was more familiar with was the 1920 race murders in Tulsa, which was a lot more people, and I was living in the middle of the country anyway at the time, I was around in 1920. But I I look good for my age, don't I?
Yeah.
See, that's positive thinking. And these things all kind of converted on my thought process tonight. And this indiscriminate mass murders. I read this article from this guy, and this is what really kind of we need to pay attention to in our own life. What kind of sets something off inside of us when we read or hear something? And this kind of sets something off, this indiscriminate mass murders for me, is because this man was writing about, he's from Miami Herald or something, but he was writing about the mass murders, and they had studied something like 700 and some since 1970 or something like that, 700 and some in the United States. And he said the common denominator to all of them was, for 98% of them, was that a male did it. A male was the person carrying it out. And so, when you, even though, females, I don't know if you'll recognize this, but even though you're not a male, it feels a little bit like a personal attack when they say anything like that. And so, when that came about, he also went on to describe that how, what the they try to find out what the reason was that the guy did it. And so, which is all good and fine, but usually it's something that didn't go right. They were turned down for a date, they didn't have a good day, whatever the reason was. There's a lot of, so what reasons, really. But he pointed out that, each of us have had those things. Had those things that they're describing, say, there's times in life when we have to overcome something that is not, we feel is not fair in our life. And, so all these things converged on me to think about, and then if you have somebody else talking to you and telling you, trying to say this, doing this gaslighting to you, trying to convert you into something, it's kind of like, a cult. Unity's called a cult, but we're the first thing from a cult. And even though, I've joked in the past and said, yeah, I'd like to be remembered as a cult because of the fact that, when the first people who followed Jesus were considered a cult before Christianity was formed, was canonized. So, all these things, though, converged on me and made me think about how we can get ourselves in a position sometimes to listen to somebody that otherwise, if we were in a free state of mind, might think they're a wacko, excuse me using that word. But and they're not really wackos. They're just out there. They're kind of like somebody probably gaslit them. I mean, you can't listen to somebody and have them form your opinions for you, because that's what essentially people are doing when they're gaslighting you. The church and the Bible will help us heal from all of our imperfections. And why I say that is because, we can look at all these things that have happened in our life, and no matter what side we stand on what decision we make on something that happens in life, it doesn't mean that it has to be something that is so extreme that we make a big deal out of it. We make big deals out of a lot of things that we really don't need to make a big deal out of. I find that sitting down and just relaxing and not responding or not reacting to something and just getting a clearer message of it from nature, from whatever you get it from God. It's all from God if you sit down and relax and don't respond, or react rather. But then you get a response that can be more understood, more fluid, and more something that people can look at and say, "Oh, okay," But sometimes if we are reacting to something, we're in a frame of mind that does not allow us to respond the way we would like to, right? I mean, sometimes we'll immediately react to something, and that's a good thing to be able to do. If someone's in danger, you want to go help them real quick, right? That's the reaction mode that people have, or that God gave us to react. That's when we should react. When we're trying to help somebody real quick, that's when we're supposed to react. but not when somebody says, "Oh, you're a jerk. Ah, you cut me off." Right? We're not supposed to react to that. That's somebody reacting to me. Take that off. Cut that out of the camera. I was just showing you this finger is damaged. It got cut off when I was at Unity Village. And if you'll look at
It's
it,
holy now.
it's holy now. Anyway, so we have the reaction, the ability to react is a good ability if we use it in a good way. But the ability to respond is a great ability if we use it in the way we're supposed to. Because there's so many people that have had good friends for a long time, have just said that relationship is no good because of something, he or she believes different than I do about some subject. Well, if you believe the same thing about a lot of things, and then you don't believe it, there would be no marriages whatsoever. I guarantee you that if you did go on that thing. Because Francie's probably the only wife in the world that agrees with everything I do and say. So I really appreciate that, Francie.
Everybody's laughing. You see that?
Oh, do you tell them something different?
You
Okay.
mean everything that she's right about.
Yeah. To be able to forgive someone, and more importantly, to be able to forgive yourself, is how we start getting over this idea of gaslighting, of people getting us to a point where we're going to react to something. I've heard it before this, and then even heard it the other day. Actually yesterday, I think they had something online about us as far as the United States coming into a civil war over different things. And I thought, oh gosh, let's not get it to that point where we can't talk to each other enough that we can get over our things. And it's been, and you can see how it's happened though. Before I came to this church, I was we were actually trying out, I think Hilton had, and I was reading their local paper, and I've used this story before, but I'll say it again. I was using their local paper, and a Southern senator from, where's Hilton, in South Carolina? A Southern senator from South Carolina said something. Wasn't racist, wasn't anything, but a Northern senator responded to him and said, "That sounds like a Southern senator from the Civil War." It wasn't even racist or anything. He just disagreed with the Northern senator. So, maybe you can see, maybe you can't. Maybe you turn it around if you can't see it that way. But as a person raised in the South, not the Southeast, but in Texas, I took offense to that a little bit and said, you're bringing something into it that has no business being into it. Just because someone disagrees with you doesn't mean that you need to bring back everything in the world that has ever been wrong wherever they live. You know what I'm saying? That's not fair. So that would be, I hope, a response that someone would give for that. But no, what usually happens? Well, you're a northern pillager. You came in and killed all our towns. You want to bring all that stuff up? They get into this war of words instead of, but then what do? What do we do as a public? Sometimes we'll go out and vote for the guy that got the best shot in, won't we? That's not right either. Come on, let's figure out what we're going to do as far as being able to talk to each other and be able to not getting along to get along is to get along to be able to present multiple ideas. That's how we grew as a country. How we grew as a humanity is to understand that there are multiple personalities, multiple types, ways of living in the world, that we can all not only get along just to get along, but we can get along to improve the whole of humanity. And that's what church is all about, really, is to, at least unity is to help us get along as a humanity, for all of us to forward the idea of humanity into living this idea that we're talking about today, which is it possible to live wholly good? So we have to forgive ourselves, forgive others, and release those things. And sometimes when we start, all the times actually, when we start the forgiveness process, we'll say, oh man, we'll get through it. We'll think we'll get through it, and we'll say, that was great. I really feel better about forgiving people that I had things against, and forgiving myself for holding something against them. But then later on in life, maybe quickly, we'll find, oh man, something's coming up again, and I thought I took care of that. But no, maybe we didn't take care of it. You know, we've got ways in unity, which I'm not going to get into today, but called Denials and Affirmations, that is very helpful in releasing that and then putting a good light into it. And then, of course, you know, once you forgive, it's easier to love and to live what we call life. But in unity, what we mean by life is living with a sense of God and expressing as much of the Christ self within us as we can. So a church that teaches the gospel will help anyone, and the gospel, you know, by most Christian standards would mean teaching the Bible. And that's what I mean in a way, but not really. What I mean for sure is the gospel, which the word means, is good news. And so, you know, when a church has on their billboard, we teach the gospel here, that's probably good, but it depends on what you're talking about by the word gospel. Most of the time it will be good, probably, but sometimes you'll get in there and they'll say, God said you have to do this or else you're going to hell, you can't live this way, you got to go that way, and you got to go left at a right signal, and if you don't do, you know, all this stuff, and that's not necessarily the good news, and it's not. I listened to Creflo Dollar for the other day. I don't know how I got on him, but I did. And he was talking about obey from the Bible. And did I put down there? Yeah. No, I didn't. Anyway, he was talking obey, and I think he did a wonderful job about explaining what the word obey means, because that's one of those words in the Bible where we think of, oh, listen, God's telling me something I've got to do. And that's not really what the word obey means. The translation, of course, all this, you know, anything that we read in the Bible is usually, unless you are multilingual, is in English. And English definitely was not the language that the Bible was written in. So anytime we look at the Bible, we got to, and we're offended by it or a word by it, then we need to step back and instead of reacting, figure out how to respond to it. And by doing a little bit of study, going to church, you'll find a bunch of this stuff out. But doing a little bit of study and finding out what exactly does that mean. Because when I hear the word obey, it reminds me of something that I don't really like to be reminded of. And so the obey, though, what it really means is to, and I give him credit for doing the study, but I did look it up, and it says he's right. It means listen to God and follow what your guidance tells you to do. That's a lot different than what we may think of what obey means, right? I mean, we may think of obey as, we may have a bad memory of our parents telling us to obey something, or sergeant, whatever, when we're in the military, whatever it is, you might have a bad memory of it. But you can change that, and that's the idea behind denials and affirmation is changing that, reframing it, not to be something that it isn't, but reframing it into something that it was meant to be by God. That might have been, if someone says obey, other than the Bible I'm talking about, says obey, they might have meant it mean. They might have meant it mean. But that's their problem, not yours. If you take it on as your problem, then you're taking on the problem. You don't have to, though. We don't have to. When to obey means to just listen to God and act accordingly. So it's a lot easier than we think it is, but we sometimes make it harder than it is. So this is what Charles Fillmore said about spiritual obedience from the Revealing Word. He says, obedience comes through understanding man's relation to God. Really, he could have stopped there. He could have stopped there. And what is our relationship to God? That is the whole point of this, is what is our relationship to God? If we consider our relationship with God, here I am and here God is, then we're missing the mark a little bit. Because God never intended to be, if God intended that, then why would God have us here at all? Just to laugh at us? Really? I mean, because it'd be pretty funny. God sent each of us here with a personal what did you say?
Message.
Yeah, message is what I'm going to say, but that's not really what I want. Mission, thank you. Thank you. Next, any other words? I need help
Begin with
sometimes.
M?
No, it doesn't have to begin with M. I wasn't even thinking of M, but it did. Anyway, a personal mission to do certain things good in life to help humanity and to help ourselves. We don't have to, if we understand our relationship to God, then we will understand, like Unity likes to say, the Christ within, that God has put some of God in us. If we believe that we were created like I do, then we believe God created us, then what we always talk about in the human idea sometimes, well, your DNA is this. Well, God created you. God's DNA is in you, right? So if God's DNA is in you, then why do we find it so hard to understand that we can't be like God here? We were intended to be like God here. So, he goes on and says, when we show forth wisdom and purity, here he's talking about it, and the perfect principle that is God, we are obedient to him. And here we come up with this obedience again. But I hope you see that when we show forth wisdom and purity and the perfect principle that is God, that we are obedient to him. It isn't, see how he's not focusing on the obedient part. It's just living as God wants you to live. And how do you think God wants you to live? God doesn't want you to live in poverty. God doesn't want you to live unhealthy. God wants you to live a full, healthy, whole, wonderful life. And if you are able to do that, then you are obedient to God. And that's an obedience that I want, to be quite honest. Each of us have the ability to follow in God's footsteps, and each step taken is easier than the last. That's the good thing about church, and that's one of the reasons that I always encourage people to come to church, physically if possible, online if not, because of the fact that, if we are having struggles in life, then there's really, even though there's more and more places to turn, it seems like when we have troubles, we feel like there's less and less places to turn, right? We don't see those more and more places because we are focused on what? On the troubles. And it takes, if you're in church and if you have people of like mind around you, and especially in a unity church like we're here to help, then you can maybe share that with someone. And that would help, then they would know how to help too. Help you to see, open that vision not to be so closed. Can we live a life wholly good? And then, holy God? Good is a synonym for God. And so, either way you look at this, can we do this? The answer is yes. Now, if you have to look at it like holy good for a while, and you're not ready to say holy God, that's okay. Whatever steps you need to take to figure out, how am I going to do this? How am I going to live a life where what other people say is what other people say? Not that I don't ignore them, not that I just slush them off from what they say, because their opinion is important. But I don't let it form enough of my opinion that I am totally to a point where I'm just a robot. I will do what you say. Because if we listen to God, then what does God... The one thing about the Bible is that if we study it, that if we listen to God, God doesn't give you one thing to do. God will give you guidance as far as one route to go. God will give you guidance. And God will give you guidance no matter what road you take. If God says, go this way, and you decide to go that way, when you get down here, just because God told you to go that way doesn't mean He's left you. God will still tell you, hey, turn around. Turn around, turn around. I would hit my head, it'd make the same sound, but I don't want to scare anybody. Turn around. So we can do that. We can do that. We can live our life wholly good and holy God. Yes, and it's time to start right now. So no matter what time it is, it's what?
Now.
That's a good little thing. I like it. I caught it. I see these things for the first time too sometimes. So, yeah, there we go. Mm-hmm.
I thought you'd like that one.
Okay, if you're willing to accept God's blessings, please join me in saying amen.
Amen.
All right. So, oh yeah, I don't know what song I got. I was having trouble picking a song, and I got a good song. I hope you all enjoy it. I've used it once before, but Francie got a new video for it, so I'm really happy about that. I'm going to go back here and start it because of the fact that I need to turn it up.